So the Chiefs just gave the Raiders a beatdown they'll never forget, and while there are plenty of exciting takeaways, they paid a bit of a price to get this W. Multiple skill position players and linemen in the trenches got banged up, with one of them now out for the season. Well, this now leaves the Chiefs dangerously thin at one position group in particular, and they might need to make a move for not just one, but a couple of players for reinforcements before the trade deadline. So I'll talk about all that and more, but first, how about those? All right, so the Chiefs just laid the smackdown on the Las Vegas Raiders yesterday at Arrowhead, winning by a final score of 31-0 that didn't really tell the entire story as to how dominant of a win this really was for Kansas City. Some of the key starters, including Mahomes, were pulled with a few seconds left in the third quarter, and I'm pretty sure Andy Reid told Gardner Minshew, against his former team, he's not allowed to throw a single pass, and they also weren't allowed to score another single point. They were even in the red zone at one point after a Kenny Pickett, who came in for Geno Smith after he got benched. Kenny Pickett fumbled, and they didn't even attempt a field goal on fourth down from inside the 20. Had the starters stayed in, I'm convinced they would have put up a 50-burger on this Raiders team. However, Andy Reid is a very classy guy and would never do that. The Raiders defense, honestly, had some opportunities to give their offense additional chances, or maybe even house an interception, but it was just one of those games where nothing went right for that defense. Mahomes threw a near gimme interception, but it was dropped. Hollywood Brown didn't protect the football on a catch and fumbled, but it just so happened to bounce right into the awaiting arms of Xavier Worthy. A pass got deflected on 3rd and 14 that still managed to get straight into the hands of Juju Smith-Schuster for the first down. And there was even another play. I think Mahomes was targeting Noah Gray, and there was some miscommunication there. A defensive back dove for the pass but couldn't haul it in. This stuff happens, and part of it was some fortunate luck for the Chiefs, but the other was simply Vegas not operating at a high enough level to take advantage of the potential mistakes. Even if they'd snagged a couple of turnovers, let's say one INT and that fumble from Hollywood Brown, Geno Smith in that offense was doing absolutely nothing all game long. So to be clear, I think the Chiefs would have won either way by a lot, but Vegas would have at least had a couple more chances to not have a shutout, maybe score 3 points, possibly 7. Highly doubt it, and regardless, it didn't happen. And outside of those few oh shoot moments, the offense moved the ball with ease and dominated their possessions. The first 4 drives were as follows: 9 plays, 92 yards, Rashie Rice touchdown on a pop pass, then 17 plays, 84 yards, Hollywood Brown touchdown snag in the middle of the end zone. Third drive, 16 plays, 94 yards, ending in a back shoulder fade to Rice, who showed perfect rapport with Mahomes as well as late hands to snatch it at the last second for the score. Then, to start the third quarter, they went 11 plays for 65 yards that was capped off by a 7-yard run by Isaiah Pacheco. They smoked them, okay? Let's just be clear. And on top of not taking advantage on a couple of those potential turnovers, the Raiders' defense were really sloppy, especially in the red zone. They drew a couple of flags on 2 different drives in the red zone to help extend the drive for the Chiefs, and they turned those into touchdowns. And to make matters worse, Max Crosby ended up leaving the game in the second quarter with a knee issue and didn't return. So they were down their best defensive player, as well as their best offensive player, and Brock Bowers, as well as wide receiver Jacoby Myers. He was ruled out just prior to the start of the game. And these guys, talking about the Raiders in general, they had absolutely no answers out there. Offense, defense, or special teams. I mean, their MVP was probably their punter, but that's not ideal, obviously. Now, the Chiefs had injuries of their own. Some concern me more than others, which I'll get to here soon. But injuries are not for Vegas. Teams don't normally get manhandled this bad in the NFL. This was a very embarrassing performance by the Raiders. A very, very great, dominant, whatever word you want to throw in there, win for the Kansas City Chiefs. For starters, KC was the first team to hold an opponent to 3 or fewer first downs in a regular season game since 2008. Meanwhile, the Chiefs had 30 first downs. So 10 times more first downs, even though the starters were pulled near the end of the third quarter. What's so funny about that is the Raiders ran 30 plays on offense. So you had 30 first downs for the Chiefs, 30 total plays for Vegas. Those 30 plays, by the way, were the second fewest ran by an offense in NFL history, with only the 1999 Browns having fewer. And by the end of the game, the Raiders had just 95 total yards on offense, not even one full football field, which funny enough, was nearly the yards KC accumulated on their first offensive possession. Anyway, those 95 yards put Vegas in very rare company. They're just the 20th team in the 2000s to have under 100 total yards by the time the clock struck zero. Speaking of zeros, with this being a shutout, it was the third shutout of the 2025 NFL season, but it was also the first shutout for the Chiefs since their 30-0 win over the Texans back in the 2015-2016 playoffs, and it's the first shutout in the regular season for the franchise since 2011, and more impressively, Andy Reid's first ever regular season shutout as a head coach in his entire career. I actually didn't believe that, looked it up, and it is true. Anyway, coming up next, I want to talk about how electric this Chiefs offense is, especially with the return of Rashie Rice, as well as some injuries that worry me, with some being potentially more drastic than others. But first, I can't wait to get out to Arrowhead this season for a Chiefs home game because there's honestly no better experience in the world. Well, that's why I got to give the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek, a huge shout out because of course that's where I get my tickets. They are the #1 rated ticketing app for a reason after all, with over 35 million downloads and more than 70,000 events listed on their site and app, which is super easy to use and honestly my preference. SeatGeek has everything you need on there too. Sports is a big one. Obviously, you got the NFL in full swing, the MLB playoffs are here, and of course, the NBA isn't too far behind. But there's also concerts, comedians, festivals, basically you name it, it's probably there for you on SeatGeek. They have your back as well, with each ticket being rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. Just look for the green dots. Green means good, red means bad. It also helps that every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee, and of course, I got a code for you guys. You can use my code HBTC10 for 10% off your next set of tickets on SeatGeek. That's 10% off with promo code HBTC10 when you buy tickets on the SeatGeek app. Just make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thanks again, SeatGeek. Now, before I get into more thoughts from the Chiefs' electric offense, I think it's worth giving some praise here to the Chiefs' defense. Chris Jones was a game wrecker on multiple plays. He led the team with 3 pressures, and he only played a little over 20 snaps, by the way, but he had the highest pass rush grade by a country mile and got to Geno on a key 3rd and 8. Charles Omenihu also got to Geno earlier in the game, but a flag on Trent McDuffie negated it. All in all, they shut Geno and that offense completely down. They were 0 for 7 on 3rd down, 0 for 1 on 4th down, and again, 95 yards of total offense. That is not good, but very great for the Chiefs defense. The thing is, it's hard to take away too much here for or from the Chiefs defense, considering the Raiders offense coming into this game was the 29th scoring offense. They basically suck. Geno Smith is really struggling. There's a lot going on there that's bad. They're bottom 3 in most offensive categories. So basically all that to say, Raiders offense, bad. But what about their defense? They're more middle of the pack, which really shows how electric this Chiefs offense is. And it's probably my biggest takeaway from this game, maybe aside from Harrison Butker making all 4 extra points and his lone field goal attempt. Love seeing that. Harrison Butker going perfect in a game. Please continue. But this offense was absolutely moving. Mahomes was 26 of 35 for 286 yards and 3 tutties. And that offense, again, they scored 4 straight offensive touchdowns, followed by a field goal on their 5th drive. That is absolute dominance. They averaged 7.8 yards per pass, were 9 for 15 on 3rd downs, 1 for 2 on 4th downs, but the stats don't really reflect how dominant or just how easily they moved the chains, because once the backups came in the 4th quarter, they weren't really converting 3rd downs, and then one of the 2 failed 4th down conversions was on that offense with Minshew in there, handing the ball off to Brashard Smith and not really being allowed to try and do anything at all. When the starters were out there, they were 4 for 4 in the red zone and converted almost every single one of their 3rd downs. Their lone 4th down attempt was also the trick play where Mahomes tried to get the Raiders defense to bite on a hard count. One side, hard count again, somebody else moved on the other side. He started cursing, saying this never freaking works. Used a little bit more dramatic language than that. But then last second, snapped the ball, and Kareem Hunt converted the 4th down there. It was a pretty funny play, but just another example of, hey, the Chiefs are still innovating. They're still having a lot of fun. They're one of the best 3rd down offenses in all of football, and really one of the best offenses in general in all of football right now through the last 4 weeks. And I didn't even mention the time of possession yet. 42 minutes for the Chiefs to 18 for the Raiders. That's an absolutely hilarious number. But the return of Rashie Rice, it was a beautiful thing to behold. This man led the pass catchers in target share by quite a bit, and he ran something like 16 routes. He was out there for 32 snaps or so, but only ran like 16 routes. However, in spite of that, he still led the team in targets, receptions, and touchdowns. Kelsey was the only guy in the room to have more receiving yards. He had 3 catches for 54 yards, and then Rashie Smith had 5 receptions for 42, which matched Rice. But the thing is, Rice appeared to be back like he never left and just looks different with the ball in his hands. Most of his catches were from quick passes, but he just moves so quickly and navigates space almost effortlessly. The yak ability that he has, again, he was on pace through 3 games last year to have 1,000 yards just after the catch. Fantastic stuff. Very exciting to have him back, and just great seeing Rice getting involved rather quickly. And honestly, he would have had 3 touchdowns on the day had Mike Caliendo not jumped early on a trick play near the goal line. That 5-yard penalty eventually led to the Hollywood Brown touchdown, and Rice was definitely opening up other opportunities for guys like Juju Smith-Schuster. He looked fantastic out there too. Gray had a fun catch for 28 yards up the left sideline as Mahomes faked a quick pass to Rashie Smith, then targeted Gray deeper down the field, and even Thornton hauled in a deep ball for 39 yards. Everybody kind of ate in this one, if I'm going to be honest, with the only quote-unquote negative pass catcher being Isaiah Pacheco. I mean, he literally had negative receiving yards. I think he looks better in the run game and has been looking better over the last 3 weeks. He's fighting hard, breaking some tackles. There's a lot of effort there, but he is not efficient in the pass game. He's had 5 targets over the last 2 games, catching 2 for a total of -3 yards. Rashie Smith is the inverse of Pacheco, being a converted wide receiver, and he's absolutely electric with the ball in his hands. But it's going to start being a bit predictable, in my opinion, in the coming weeks with Rashie Smith on the field if they rarely ever hand him off the football. Mainly when he's out there, he's getting looks in the pass game. He did have 14 carries yesterday, but 13 of them, I believe, were in garbage time with Minshew handing him off the football. That's probably where my quote-unquote complaints for the offense stop, though, because how can you really complain when the offense has scored 28 or more points in the last 4 games and are top 3 in nearly every offensive metric? Basically, the Chiefs' offense is all the way back, and it is extremely exciting. Firework after firework, you really do love to see it. Now, something I don't love to see at all are injuries, and that is one of my greatest concerns coming out of this game. Let's start on offense. Xavier Worthy re-aggravated his shoulder as he fully extended out for a contested grab from Mahomes and went to the sideline after that play, clearly in pain. He slammed his helmet down on the ground. You could just tell that one hurt. He did return to play, but it's worth monitoring and keeping eyes on. That shoulder injury, to be honest, is going to bother him most likely off and on all year, and he will probably need off-season shoulder surgery. Topic for another day, though. But then Kareem Hunt, who had a bunch of awesome 3rd and 4th down conversions, the trick play that I mentioned earlier, he got his ankle rolled up on the Rashie Rice pop pass for a touchdown, and he had to leave the field of play, got his ankle taped, but did return and finish out the game at least when the starters were in. Then Kingsley Suamataia, he never left the game, but he was noticeably bothered and slow to get up on multiple plays, and if that wasn't enough, Trey Smith left the game pretty early on with a back issue and never returned. Then another O-line injury. Jawan Taylor was listed as questionable to return with a shoulder, and he also didn't return. My hope for Trey Smith is pulling him was more a precautionary thing than anything else. But back issues like that do scare me, especially for the big guys in the trenches. Jawan Taylor, I think, could have finished out the game if it was close, but honestly, there was no need. So several players are banged up on the O-line, and that's not to mention Josh Simmons is still away from the team. Andy Reid said today during his Zoom presser, he has no updates on Simmons, and he kind of insinuated that he wanted the media to move on from it, leave it alone for now, adding that Veach was handling everything to do with that situation. So that's all we got on Josh Simmons. No idea what's going on there. So the O-line in general is just something to watch with Simmons away and then multiple guys banged up in various capacities. But shout out to Mike Caliendo, who filled in pretty early on for Trey Smith and allowed 0 pressures on his 32 pass blocking snaps and actually had the highest pass blocking grade along the line. Jalen Moore, once again, filled in nicely for Josh Simmons, so kudos to him. Creed remains lights out, one of the best, if not the best, center in all of football. Kingsley, I know he was a little shaken up on a couple plays, but he continues to improve on average every single week. And that consistency from the offensive line is helping Mahomes have more trust and confidence out there than he's had in years. And it clearly shows up. Mahomes is really he's playing lights out. MVP level or close to it, making a bunch of key scrambles in this game too to help move the chains. He thankfully didn't lead the room in rushing yards, and you shouldn't when you're going to win this game 31-0. Anyway, the injury news doesn't stop there, because the worst one of them all was defensive tackle Norman-Lott, who went down screaming in pain on one play and had to be helped off the field by his teammates. Mahomes was one of them. It honestly looked bad. I feared for the worst, and sadly it was confirmed a day after his MRI that Omar tore his ACL, and he's out for the rest of the 2025 NFL season. He should make a full recovery for 2026, but it's a real bummer for him. His role was going to increase as time went on, and they really needed another quality defensive tackle out there other than Chris Jones. That's now the third defensive lineman on injured reserve for the year. Felix Anudike-Uzomah with the hamstring, Janarius Robinson with the foot. I believe he's on season-ending IR, and now Norman-Lott with his right knee, that ACL. The one thing on this roster that you could argue the Chiefs needed help with, maybe via a trade before the deadline, even before Norman-Lott's injury, was on the trenches, D-line, whether it was defensive end or defensive tackle. Well, now, I'm not really sure the Chiefs have a choice here. Matt Miller of ESPN saw the reports, as we did last week, that the Chiefs were calling around and potentially trying to find a D lineman to trade for, but those talks are obviously going to ramp up now, and it's almost a must at this point. They've got Chris Jones, Jerry Tillery, Derek Nottie, and that's it for the interior, unless they want to call up Marlon Tuipulotu from the practice squad. Even when they have, he hasn't really played many defensive snaps at all, and I think the Chiefs would be very wise to make a move sooner rather than later. Regardless, it might not be before the next game, which is Monday Night Football against the Washington Commanders, and a big name over there to watch out for is their quarterback one, Jaden Daniels. He suffered a hamstring injury yesterday, and his status currently for Monday Night Football next week is up in the air. More on that game throughout the week, though. But with this dominant win over the Raiders, the Chiefs moved to 4-3 on the year. And thanks to the Giants allowing Denver to score 33 points in the fourth quarter yesterday, I could not believe that. The Broncos are 5-2 and first in the AFC West right now. I think the Chiefs pull ahead here in a few weeks, but it would be helpful if one of these teams, somebody else, can help KC out a bit here and there, please. Especially a team like the New York Giants that was up 26-8 with 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Oh, man, shame. Anyway, I digress about that. Instead, I'd rather hear your thoughts about this dominant victory over the Raiders in the comments down below. Who were your biggest standouts? How concerned are you about some of these injuries? Let me know all your main takeaways in the comments down below. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?